In grade 3, we extended the work we had begun in grade 2. About half of the students had been in the grade 2 class, and the other half were new to beading. We began with some familiar patterns to get students orientated to the template, but by the end of the year, as you'll see in the photo on the bottom right of the slide, students were designing their own complex patterns. They also progressed from working with the larger pony beads to smaller size 8 beads. This is some information that Christina taught us. Bead sizes are based on how many beads fit in an inch. So, size 8 beads means that there are 8 beads to an inch. The grade 6 students, who will meet in the last session of this series, use size 10 beads, which are smaller because 10 of those beads fit in an inch. Just a note about terminology. The repeating portion of a repeating pattern can be referred to as a unit of repeat, and this is probably the more technical term. However, in this study, students were used to the term pattern core, which is also widely used, and so this is the term we'll be using. In this session, we'll start with some of the initial work that we did around copying, extending, and analyzing patterns. In the next session, we'll look at how this work extended to proportional reasoning and two-dimensional transformations. To review, we began with a 20-column template. As you recall, the warp threads run lengthwise along the loom, and the weft threads run horizontally. The weft threads are the threads that the beads are strung onto when woven onto the warp threads. On the template, the warp threads are represented by the rows and the weft threads by the columns. In this video, you'll see an example of Christina and Anne co-teaching. Christina began by teaching a little bit about the history and cultural importance of looming. Then Anne and Christina worked together to introduce the staircase pattern. This was used to get the students used to the horizontal and vertical construction of the grid and the potential for incorporating diagonals. We found that during the pre-instruction interviews, some students had a surprisingly difficult time accurately copying and extending this pattern, and also had difficulty perceiving the entire two-dimensional design as a repeating pattern. Copying and extending the pattern onto the paper template allowed students to get a sense of the space they'd be working with. By working within the template, and with concrete manipulatives, the students began to notice characteristics of the pattern. For example, they realized that this is a repeating pattern, and that the first 6 columns represent the part of the pattern that repeats, or the pattern core. The students seemed to focus on the column structure of the pattern, likely because this is how Anne and Christina introduced it. We start with Christina introducing the students to her beadwork. Then we'll see students copying and extending the pattern and identifying the pattern core. We'll also see students making what we call next predictions, that is, predicting what the 21st column would look like, which takes them just off the template. For these predictions, the students need to identify the parts of the pattern core that are present in columns 19 and 20 and relate those to the full pattern core in order to predict what comes next.